The bank teller's cackle sliced through the hum of the lobby like a knife through butter. Your mom owns this bank? Kid, go play pretend somewhere else. 12-year-old Marcus Tate stood frozen, his small hands gripping the edge of the polished counter. The words stung, sharp and bitter, but he didn't flinch. His worn sneakers squeaked against the marble floor as he shifted his weight, eyes locked on the teller, Miss Karen Whitmore, according to her nameplate. Her smug grin widened, and the line of customers behind Marcus began to murmur. He could feel their stares, a mix of pity and amusement, burning into the back of his neck. The air in the bank felt thick, like it was pressing down on him, but Marcus straightened his spine. He wasn't here to play games. It was a sweltering Tuesday afternoon in downtown Atlanta, and the First National Bank was packed. The lobby buzzed with the clatter of keyboards, the rustle of deposit slips, and the low hum of conversation. Marcus had walked in with a purpose, clutching a folder stuffed with papers his mother had given him. "Take these to the bank, Marcus," she'd said that morning, her voice calm but firm. "They're for the new account. Ms. Whitmore will know what to do." He'd nodded, proud to help, unaware that this simple errand would spiral into a moment that would change everything. Marcus had waited in line for 20 minutes, the folder tucked under his arm, his Braves cap slightly askew. He'd rehearsed what to say, wanting to get it right. When he finally reached the counter, he slid the folder toward Ms. Whitmore, a woman with tightly pinned hair and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My mom sent me to drop these off," he said, his voice steady. "She owns the bank, so you should know her." That's when the laughter started. Ms. Whitmore's eyes flicked over him, his faded t-shirt, his scuffed sneakers, his brown skin, and she didn't even try to hide her disbelief. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "That's the funniest thing I've heard all week. Your mom owns this bank." She leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping the counter. "What's her name, then? Let's see if I know this owner." The murmurs behind Marcus grew louder. An older man in a suit coughed awkwardly. A woman with a stroller whispered to her friend, "Poor kid." Marcus's cheeks burned, but he didn't back down. "Her name's Dr. Elaine Tate," he said, his voice rising slightly. "She's the CEO. She told me to come here." Ms. Whitmore's laughter erupted again, louder this time, drawing more eyes. "Sbro? Oh, sweetheart. You've got quite the imagination." She flipped open the folder, barely glancing at the documents, and shoved it back toward him. Papers spilled onto the floor, fluttering like fallen leaves. "This isn't a game, kid. Go home and tell your mom to come herself if she's got business here." Marcus's hands trembled as he knelt to gather the papers. Each one was a piece of his mother's trust in him, now scattered across the cold marble. He could feel the weight of every stare, every whispered judgment. "I'm not lying," he said, standing up, his voice shaking but resolute. "She's Dr. Elaine Tate. She owns this bank." Ms. Whitmore crossed her arms, her smirk sharpening. "Listen, kid. I've worked here for 15 years. I know the CEO, and it's not let's just say it's not your mom." The pause in her words carried a weight Marcus understood all too well. He'd heard that tone before at school, in stores, on the bus. It was the sound of someone assuming he didn't belong. The line behind him was growing restless now. A man in a delivery uniform muttered, "Can we move this along?" Another customer, a woman with a pearl necklace, leaned over to Ms. Whitmore and said, "Maybe he's confused. Kids make up stories." Marcus's heart pounded. He wasn't confused. He wasn't making anything up. His mom did own the bank. She'd told him stories about how she'd fought her way to the top, how she'd bought controlling shares after years of being overlooked. She was the youngest black woman to ever hold that title in the state of Georgia. And now this woman was laughing at him like he was nothing. "Ma'am," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "Just check the papers. They've got her name on them." He pushed the folder back toward her, but Ms. Whitmore barely glanced at it. Instead, she picked up her phone and dialed security. "We've got a kid causing a scene," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Might need someone to escort him out." The word escort hit Marcus like a punch. He wasn't causing a scene. He was just doing what his mom asked. The injustice of it burned in his chest, but he didn't know how to make her listen. The crowd's whispers grew into a low roar, and Marcus felt the walls closing in. He wanted to run, to hide, but he thought of his mom's words that morning. "Stand tall, Marcus. You're a Tate." So he stayed, rooted to the spot, clutching the folder like a lifeline. That's when the tension in the room shifted. The glass doors at the far end of the lobby swung open, and a hush fell over the crowd. Dr. Elaine Tate stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. She was a vision of authority-tailored navy suit, hair pulled back in a sleek bun, her presence commanding the room without effort. Marcus's heart leapt. She was here. Elaine's eyes scanned the lobby, landing on her son at the counter. Then they flicked to Ms. Whitmore, whose smug expression faltered for the first time. Elaine's stride didn't slow as she crossed the room, her briefcase swinging lightly in her hand. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing something big was about to happen. "Marcus," Elaine said, her voice calm but carrying an edge that silenced the murmurs. "Is everything all right?" Ms. Whitmore's face paled, but she recovered quickly, forcing a smile. "Oh, you must be his mother. I'm so sorry. There's been a misunderstanding. Your son was well, he was claiming you own the bank, and I own the bank." Elaine cut her off, her tone sharp enough to slice through steel. She set her briefcase on the counter with a deliberate thud. "That's not a claim, Ms. Whitmore. It's a fact." The lobby went dead silent. Marcus's chest swelled with pride, but he could see the storm brewing in his mother's eyes. Ms. Whitmore's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. I didn't mean," she stammered, her hands fumbling with the folder she'd dismissed moments ago. Elaine didn't wait for her to finish. She opened the folder, pulling out a document with her name in bold. Dr. Elaine Tate, Chief Executive Officer, First National Bank of Atlanta. She slid it across the counter, her gaze never leaving Ms. Whitmore's. "You didn't bother to read this, did you?" she asked, her voice low but laced with fury. "You saw my son, made your assumptions, and decided he didn't belong here." The crowd was no longer whispering. Every eye was on Ms. Whitmore, whose face had gone from pale to ashen. She tried to speak, but Elaine raised a hand, silencing her. "My son came here to do a simple task. You laughed at him, you humiliated him, and you called security. For what? Because he's a black boy in a bank you think he shouldn't be in?" Marcus watched as Ms. Whitmore's composure crumbled. Her hands shook as she clutched the counter, her eyes darting to the other tellers, who were now staring at their screens, avoiding the scene. The man in the delivery uniform shifted uncomfortably. The woman with the pearl necklace looked away, her cheeks flushed. "Ma'am, I didn't mean," Ms. Whitmore started, but Elaine wasn't having it. "You didn't mean to what?" Elaine's voice rose, not in volume but in intensity. "You didn't mean to judge my son based on his skin? You didn't mean to assume he was lying because of how he looks? You didn't mean to make him feel small in a place where he has every right to be." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes, but he blinked them back. He wasn't Sada was angry, and he was proud. His mom was standing up for him, for them, for every time they'd been looked down on or dismissed. Elaine turned to Marcus, her expression softening for a moment. "You did good, Marcus. You stood tall." Then she faced Ms. Whitmore again, her voice cold. "You, on the other hand, have a lot to answer for." The security guard who'd been called hesitated at the edge of the crowd, unsure of what to do. Elaine didn't acknowledge him. Instead, she addressed the entire lobby, her voice carrying to every corner. This bank was built on trust, on fairness, on serving everyone. If you can't uphold that, you don't belong here. Ms. Whitmore's hands were trembling now, her eyes wide with panic. "Dr. Tate, I swear, I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Elaine said, cutting her off. "You saw my son and decided who he was before he even opened his mouth. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." The crowd was silent, the weight of Elaine's words settling over them. Marcus looked around, seeing the mix of shame, agreement, and discomfort on their faces. He realized this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every kid who'd ever been laughed at, every person who'd been judged for their skin or their clothes or their accent. His mom was fighting for all of them. Elaine picked up the folder, handing it to another teller who'd been watching from the side. "Process these correctly," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Then she turned back to Ms. Whitmore. "You'll be hearing from HR. I suggest you start thinking about what you're going to say." Ms. Whitmore's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked like she'd been slapped, her smugness replaced by raw fear. Marcus almost felt sorry for her almost. But then he remembered the way she'd laughed, the way she'd made him feel like he was nothing. He didn't feel sorry anymore. Elaine put a hand on Marcus's shoulder, guiding him toward the door. "Let's go, Marcus," she said softly. "You've done enough here." As they walked out, the crowd parted again, some people nodding in respect, others looking away in shame. Marcus held his head high, his mom's words echoing in his mind. "Stand tall, Marcus. You're a Tate." He felt stronger than he ever had, not because of what he'd done, but because of what he'd seen: justice, real and raw, unfolding in front of him. But the story wasn't over. As they stepped into the sunlight, Marcus glanced back at the bank, wondering what would happen to Ms. Whitmore. He didn't know it yet, but her actions were about to unravel her life in ways she couldn't imagine. And for Marcus, this was just the beginning of understanding the power of standing up, speaking out, and demanding respect in a world that too often tried to take it away. Outside the bank, the Atlanta sun blazed, but Marcus Tate felt a cool resolve settling over him. His mother's hand on his shoulder was a steady weight, a reminder of the storm they'd just walked through. Dr. Elaine Tate's navy suit seemed to absorb the light, her presence as commanding on the sidewalk as it had been in the lobby. Marcus glanced up at her, catching the faintest tightening of her eyes. She was calm, but he knew her well enough to sense the anger still smoldering beneath the surface. "Ma'am," Marcus said, his voice quieter now. "Is Ms. Whitmore going to be okay?" He wasn't know why he asked. Part of him wanted her to face consequences, but another part, the part that still believed people could change, wondered if she'd learn anything from this. Elaine paused, her heels clicking to a stop. She looked down at Marcus, her gaze steady. "She'll face what she's earned, Marcus. People like her, they don't always see the harm they cause until it's staring them in the face. But you did right by standing your ground." Marcus nodded, clutching the empty folder in his hands. The papers were being processed now, but the weight of what had happened lingered. He could still hear Ms. Whitmore's laughter, feel the sting of the crowd's stares. As they walked toward their car, a sleek black SUV parked across the street, Marcus's mind raced. He'd always known the world could be unfair, His mom had warned him about that since he was little, but today, it had slapped him in the face. Back inside the bank, Karen Whitmore stood frozen behind the counter, her hands trembling as she tried to process what had just happened. The lobby had returned to its usual hum, but the other tellers avoided her gaze. Her colleague, Sarah, a younger woman with kind eyes, hesitated before whispering, "Karen, you should have just looked at the papers." Karen's jaw tightened. "How was I supposed to know?" she snapped, her voice low but defensive. "He's just a kid, Sarah. Kids make things up." Sarah shook her head, her expression a mix of pity and frustration. "You didn't even give him a chance. You saw him and you know what you did." Karen's face flushed. She wanted to argue, to say she'd done nothing wrong, but the memory of Dr. Tate's voice, sharp, unyielding, stopped her cold. She'd worked at First National for 15 years, priding herself on her professionalism, her ability to read people. But today she'd misread everything, and deep down she knew why. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Karen processed transactions with mechanical precision, but her mind was elsewhere. By closing time, a memo from HR was waiting in her inbox. "Meeting with management, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Subject, conduct review." Her stomach churned. She'd heard stories of employees being let go for less. As she locked up her station, she caught her reflection in the glass partition, pinched lips, tired eyes. For the first time, she wondered if she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Meanwhile, Marcus and Elaine drove home in silence, the city blurring past. Their house, a modest but well-kept two-story in a quiet suburb, felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of the bank. Inside, Marcus dropped his folder on the kitchen table and sank into a chair. Elaine set her briefcase down and started making tea, her movements deliberate, as if grounding herself. "You want to talk about it?" she asked, sliding a mug toward him. Marcus stared at the steam rising from the tea. "Why'd she laugh, Mom?" "I told her the truth." Elaine sighed, sitting across from him. "Some people, Marcus, they see what they want to see. They look at you, your skin, your age, your clothes, and they think they know your story. Ms. Whitmore made a choice to judge you before she even listened." "But you showed her," Marcus said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Elaine's expression softened, but her eyes were still fierce. "I showed her because I had to. Not just for you, but for every kid like you who gets laughed at or pushed aside. This world's full of Karen Whitmores, Marcus. You've got to be ready for them." Marcus nodded, but the weight of her words settled heavily on him. He thought about school, where kids sometimes whispered about his fancy mom, or the park, where old ladies clutched their purses when he walked by. He'd always brushed it off, but today was different. Today it had been personal. That night, as Marcus lay in bed, he couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the scene in his head, the laughter, the scattered papers, his mom's voice cutting through the noise. He wondered what would happen to Ms. Whitmore. Would she apologize? Would she even care? And what about the people in line, the ones who'd watched and done nothing? Were they just as bad? The next morning, Karen Whitmore arrived at the bank early, her stomach in knots. The HR meeting loomed like a storm cloud. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with excuses, defenses, anything to justify what she'd done. But as she sat in the sterile conference room, facing the bank's HR director, Mr. Coleman, and the branch manager, Ms. Alvarez, her confidence wavered. "Ms. Whitmore," Mr. Coleman began, his tone neutral but firm, "we've reviewed the incident involving Marcus Tate and Dr. Elaine Tate. Security footage and witness statements confirm you dismissed the boy's request without reviewing his documents and made derogatory remarks about his claims." Karen's mouth went dry. I didn't know who he was. He said his mom owned the bank, and I thought, You thought he was lying. Ms. Alvarez cut in, her voice sharp. You didn't verify his story. You didn't follow protocol. Instead, you humiliated a child in front of a crowded lobby. Karen's hands twisted in her lap. I've worked here for 15 years. I've never had a complaint. Until now, Mr. Coleman said. Dr. Tate has requested a formal apology, and we're inclined to agree. But this isn't just about one incident, Karen. Your actions reflect a pattern of bias that we can't ignore. The word bias hit Karen like a slap. She wanted to protest, to say she wasn't prejudiced, that she treated everyone the same. But the memory of Marcus's face defiant hurt stopped her. She'd seen his skin, his youth, and assumed he didn't belong. She couldn't deny it. By the end of the meeting, Karen was suspended without pay for 2 weeks, pending a full investigation. She was also required to complete mandatory sensitivity training and issue a written apology to Marcus and Dr. Tate. As she left the room, her legs felt unsteady. For the first time in years, she questioned herself, not just her actions, but the beliefs that had shaped them. Word of the incident spread quickly. By noon, a local news outlet had picked up the story, prompted by a customer who'd recorded part of the confrontation on their phone. The headline read, "Bank Teller Mocks Black Boy's Claim About CEO Mom Gets Shut Down by Her Arrival." Social media erupted, with Justice for Marcus trending on X. Some praised Dr. Tate's poise, others condemned Karen's behavior, and a few defended her, arguing she'd made an honest mistake. At school, Marcus became an unlikely celebrity. Kids who'd barely spoken to him before now crowded around, asking for details. "Did she really laugh at you?" one asked. "Was your mom mad?" another pressed. Marcus shrugged most of it off, but he couldn't ignore the pride swelling in his chest. His mom had always told him their family stood for something bigger than themselves, and now he was starting to understand what that meant. Elaine, meanwhile, used the incident to spark change. She met with the bank's board, pushing for new training programs to address racial bias among staff. She also started a mentorship program for young Black students, inviting Marcus to help design it. "This is your fight too," she told him. "You showed that yesterday." Marcus threw himself into the project, sketching ideas for workshops and outreach events. For the first time, he felt like his voice mattered, not just as Dr. Tate's son, but as himself. He started speaking up more at school, joining the debate club, and even writing a short essay about the bank incident for a class assignment. His teacher, Ms. Harper, read it aloud, her voice cracking with emotion. "This," she said, "is what courage looks like." Karen's suspension ended, but her return to work was anything but triumphant. The other tellers were polite but distant, and customers who'd seen the news treated her with cold formality. Her apology letter, carefully worded but lacking warmth, arrived at the Tate household a week later. Marcus read it, then set it aside. "She didn't mean it," he told his mom. Elaine nodded. "Maybe not, but she's not the point, Marcus. The point is what we do next." What came next was bigger than either of them expected. The bank's new training program rolled out, drawing praise from community leaders. Elaine's mentorship initiative grew, with dozens of kids signing up. Marcus found himself mentoring a shy 7th grader named Jamal, who reminded him of himself, quiet, but with a spark waiting to ignite. Helping Jamal find his voice gave Marcus a sense of purpose he'd never known. Karen, meanwhile, struggled to rebuild her life. The training sessions forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about her assumptions, but change didn't come easily. She started noticing things she'd ignored before: the way she tensed when certain customers approached, the quick judgments she made based on appearance. It was humbling and it hurt. She never reached out to Marcus again, but she carried the weight of that day like a stone. Months later, Marcus and Elaine attended a community event at the bank, celebrating the mentorship program's launch. The lobby was packed, but this time, the energy was warm, hopeful. Marcus spotted Sarah, the teller who'd whispered to Karen that day. She smiled at him, giving a small nod. "You're doing big things, Marcus," she said. He grinned. "Just getting started." As the event wound down, Elaine pulled Marcus aside. "I'm proud of you," she said, her voice soft but fierce. "You took something ugly and turned it into something good. That's power." Marcus nodded, his heart full. He thought about Ms. Whitmore, about the crowd, about the way the world sometimes tried to make him feel small. But he also thought about his mom, about Jamal, about the kids who'd look up to him now. He wasn't small. He was a Tate, and he was ready for whatever came next. The incident at First National became a story people told, a cautionary tale about prejudice, a testament to resilience. But for Marcus, it was more than that. It was the day he learned that standing tall wasn't just about facing down laughter or judgment. It was about building something better in its place. What do you think? Where does justice lie in a moment like this? Share your thoughts on right, wrong, and the conflicts that shape our communities.